Welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast, where I, Genevieve Faulkner, share what I'm becoming aware of. Welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast. My name is Genevieve Faulkner, your host, and if you're watching this on YouTube, hi. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about, are you really aligned with what you're asking for? So kind of a continuation on from what we talked about last week, but kind of like the next step. So really, like, if you've had a little bit of time to look at what it is that you're desiring to create this year. What are your targets? What are your goals? And maybe you haven't. And if you haven't, maybe it's time to, because one of the things like I am aware of is that manifesting or creating reality is very much like, driving a car. Like if you hop in the car and you're just driving around, where are you going to get to? It's much better to have a destination in mind, right? Then you know where you're going. You know how to navigate the roads to get to the place where you want to get to. So set some targets for yourself. You don't need to make them significant, meaning that like you put so much emphasis on them, you don't even want to head towards them. But really just starting to look at and asking yourself questions about like, what is it that I want to create? Where would I like to head? What would I like my life to look like, in the next year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, if everything was possible and I was including myself in every single choice, what would I be allowing myself to create? So are you aligned with what you're asking for? So first of all, like with regards to whatever it is that you're seeking to create, maybe you can rattle off a few things that you would like. Are you aligned with that? So when I ask these kinds of questions to people, often they can come up with different things that they'd like to create. And, one of the main ones that people will often ask for is like, amounts of money, large amounts of money. Yet, like, in order to create something like that, you actually have to be willing to allow yourself to have it. You have to be engaged enough in the creation of your own life to be able to bring it into reality. And so what I would like to invite you guys to look at today is that. How engaged are you with regards to your targets, with your goals, with yourself? Because if there is disengagement, that's where you're using your energy against yourself. That's where your energy is invested somewhere else, not invested in the creation of your reality. So first off, I'd just like to point out disengagement. What does disengagement look like? It looks like disconnect. It looks like not being interested. It looks like not even asking a question. It looks like perhaps in the real world, maybe spending a lot of time doing things that you may be thinking that you're doing in order to relax, but are actually about disconnecting. So for some of you, it might be things like, vices, like things that are quite addictive, possibly like eating, drinking, whatever other things that people use to distract themselves. It might be social media scrolling, getting on and doom scrolling and just like numbing out. That's disengagement. That's not being willing to be present with yourself. That's trying to disconnect from something within yourself that you don't want to look at or don't know how to change. And that is what I would like to invite you to move beyond, because doing that kind of behavior over and over and over and over again guarantees that you're going to end up creating a future that is the same as your present reality, or it's going to be worse off than what you're currently experiencing. The only way to create a greater future for yourself is to be present and engaged with yourself and make choices for yourself from that space. So engagement is kind of like the opposite. It's like being curious. It's being willing to look at the energy of whatever it is that you're seeking to create or choose, and receiving the awareness of, what that reality is like. And it's through that engagement, that curiosity, that you actually know what to choose next and you know when to choose it. So some of the reasons why sometimes we have that disengaged energy, as I said, it's about something within that may be, something that you've decided that you don't know how to handle, or is too painful to change or too difficult to change. It's something, that's unmovable, which isn't actually true, but it's kind of like, that's what perhaps your subconscious has decided. So you're kind of like trying to disconnect from it. But sometimes it's also this learned behavior from childhood, because a lot of the time we mirror within ourselves, unless we've done a lot of work on ourselves to change the dynamic. We often create a relationship with ourselves that mirrors the way in which our parents created a relationship with us. And if our parents were people that had given up on their dreams, or that had disconnected from parts of themselves because they were in that pattern of feeling like things were too hard to change or whatever, then they wouldn't have been able to be fully present with us as children, right? Or you as a child. And I did mention this in the last episode. So that means that there can be this learned behavioral pattern of disengaging with yourself all the time, not recognizing that perhaps you are important, or that your dreams are important enough, because that's what you were kind of like fed through the relationships that you've had. And so part of the process of getting to a place where you're creating a reality that really works for you might be reparenting yourself, looking honestly at the way in which those relationship dynamics played out as a kid, and committing to changing that behavior within. And that actually means noticing, being present enough with yourself, noticing when that disengaged energy starts to come up, that need to disconnect, that need to dismiss, that need to focus on something else that is not you or your dreams or what it is that you'd like to create. And then kind of like being like, well, okay, that's there, that's an energy. But if I wasn't making that real or true for me, if I wasn't making that the automatic choice, what can I choose right now to change this? Okay? Because just because that's the automatic learned behavior, that doesn't mean that that has to be your reality. Now, for some of you, it might be that easy. For others of you, there might be some belief work involved. Like theta healing is one way to do that. You can, dissect the elements of what's created that, and then we can bring in new energy and new belief systems to reprogram the subconscious mind so that you're not doing that anymore, and so that you're not having to filter your choices through that disengagement. So back to, are you aligned with what it is that you're asking for? If you look at the things that you would like to create this year, is there that curiosity about how you're going to get there? Is there an energy of aliveness, or a desire to take action, or an excitement about it showing up? Or is there this disconnect and this kind of lumpy, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just this lumpy kind of glunk energy? If there is, this is what you need to ask yourself. So first of all, do my dreams matter? Okay, so maybe they don't. Maybe you've been taught that they haven't, as I've just addressed with regards to what you grew up with. And so it might be looking at that and acknowledging that was the pattern, and then actually giving yourself permission to let your dreams matter. Okay, so actually making that commitment to self. Okay, I'm going to let this matter to me. I'm going to let my reality be important enough to actually be here. I'm not going to self-abandon. I'm not going to give up myself for the relationships that I've had, or to validate my childhood experience. I'm going to create something different for myself now. The next thing that you can ask is this goal too big? Okay, because one of the things that we can sometimes do when we're going into this manifesting state, from the place of using our conscious mind and kind of like, it's like anything's possible, we can kind of like throw out all of these big kind of targets. Yet the big targets are actually often from the place of disconnecting from your subconscious, or the energy within. And it's the energy within and that subconscious mind and all of the belief systems that you have that actually is the huge contributor to whether or not your reality shows up, or what it is that you're asking for shows up. And so disconnecting or asking for things from that place of disconnection is not going to allow you to bring things into reality. So it's looking at, when you're asking for things, is the dream too big? And if it is, there's no wrongness in that. Like, maybe you do actually have that big vision. Maybe that is what you really desire. But in that case, you want to start to dissect that a little bit and make the target smaller, okay? Because if you make the target too big for yourself, if your subconscious looks at it and can't see the full way to get there, sometimes it can have this, you might have this kind of control mechanism activated where it's like, too hard, gonna fail, not even gonna try, right? Whereas if you make the goals smaller or the targets smaller along the way, you'll be able to see sometimes the way in which to get there with a lot more ease. And it's through allowing yourself to get to the first target. Well, then the second target seems way more possible than if you were just going for the second target in the first place, right? And so it's through creating the smaller targets that you can actually begin to create a reality where you're kind of like acknowledging your achievement a lot more, congratulating yourself. Like, it's more of that positive reinforcement type reality that actually cheers you on to create the greater reality. Whereas the other one is more like, functioning from this place of perfectionism where you have to get it right and perfect. And if not, you're a failure, right? Hopefully you can see the difference with that. So breaking down the targets to make them a little bit smaller. You want to ask yourself also, is there something unsafe about this target for me? Now, that might sound a little bit weird, but a lot of the belief systems that we hold on to within our subconscious mind, we're holding on to them for a reason. So sometimes it's that our brain is trying to learn how to be almost like the opposite thing. So it might be that we're holding on to, trauma from being abused, for example, but we're learning that so that we know how to be kind to ourselves or how to be kind to others, how to include others in our journey. But sometimes it's also that we're holding on to different belief systems because we think that those belief systems are keeping us safe. And so sometimes in order to achieve what it is that we desire to achieve, we actually have to bring our subconscious into alignment with regards to what is or isn't safe. Because sometimes the belief systems are not actually the truth. So an example would be is if you perhaps are asking for a lot of money, there might be something within your subconscious that is saying that's not safe. Why would that not be safe? We as beings have had so many different lifetimes. And we can hold on to belief systems from those lifetimes. We also have a tendency to take on belief systems within our DNA, so from our ancestors. So if we've had experiences either in past lives or we've had experiences, or our ancestors have had experiences where they've had money and people have, conspired against them. They've been jealous of them. They've locked them in institutions to get power over their resources. They've persecuted them. They've stabbed them in the back, whatever it is. There can be trauma or there can be belief systems created by those experiences that then create this safety mechanism within our brain that tells us, nope, that kind of money, that ain't safe because this is going to happen again. So sometimes it's actually asking yourself, is there something unsafe about this target for me? And it's maybe asking a few other questions to really get to the core issue. So it's kind of like looking at, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? What is the worst thing that can happen if I achieve this target? Because the worst thing that can happen that you can think of, that's usually from the paradigm of all of the belief systems that you have. So it's like you're going to find the answer from somewhere in your history or somewhere within the programming of your ancestry. And if that's the thing that comes to mind, that's the thing that you're holding the belief systems or the trauma about. And so it's acknowledging that that's there, and then it's acknowledging that that's not now. That's not the current reality. Sometimes that's enough for people. Just acknowledging that the times are different, you are different, you are more ready for this now, this isn't the same as the past. Perhaps there's all sorts of things that you've experienced between then and now that have created a greater sense of awareness, a greater sense of power, that means that you will handle things differently. Simply acknowledging what you actually know can begin to shift and change things within the subconscious and align your energy. For others of you, there may be healing required. Once again, there are ways like theta healing where we go into that situation and bring in energy in order to resolve the situation and to integrate the learnings, so that that part of you that's still stuck in that time or place can actually move forward into the present moment and create the reality that you desire to create without the resistance and the fight, because you're kind of like, trying to keep yourself safe. The other thing you want to ask yourself is there a conflict of interest with regards to what it is that you value? So if we use money again as an example, what are your points of view about money? Like, if you're asking to create a greater reality with money, I would highly, highly, highly recommend start to look at your relationship with money as it is now. What is your relationship with money? How do you feel about it? Do you feel like it's there for you? Do you treat it well? Does it treat you well? Money will often mirror all sorts of relationship dynamics that we have either with ourselves or with other people. And it's often connects again to those relationships in early childhood. And so it's a great way of kind of getting a gauge of how loving you're really willing to be with yourself, how kind and nurturing you're willing to be with yourself, and how much you're willing to really receive and acknowledge yourself, okay? Can you receive money with ease? Are you grateful for it? Or is there a need to push it away? When you're spending all of the time and, like it might be that you can create a lot of money, but it's gone very quickly. That's usually an indication that you're not actually willing to receive the money in the first place, okay? And that ties into all sorts of subconscious beliefs about deserving the money, right? So it's looking at what's there that actually begins to create the shift that then allows you to create more. You cannot create your dreams, or it's much harder to create your dream reality or meet your targets if you're fighting against yourself. So is there a conflict of interest with what it is that you value? So what is it that you value? Do you know? Like, what's important to you? And can you achieve your target and still maintain those values? Are the values actually yours, or are they values that have been imposed on you based upon your upbringing or ancestry or whatever else, or society? Like, what's actually true for you? The more you can be clear about what you truly value, the more ease you're going to have with knowing the direction that you want to head. But also looking at what you've tied together, and sometimes it's actually untying those things that creates the ease. So an example would be, people can have all sorts of beliefs about money based upon the things that they've experienced, the things that they've seen. Money, people can be corrupt with money, people can be unkind with money, they can be demeaning. They can think that they're better than everybody else. That's not actually money. That's just people's points of view about money and the money that they have. It's kind of like when they link their ego with money, then that creates all sorts of stuff that can create, if you're looking at that from the outside, a resistance to having it. But that's not actually money. That's money enhancing the belief systems that are already there. And so that's why it's important to look at what are your belief systems, what is your relationship to this, so that is able to be enhanced, or you correct that relationship, shift and change that relationship, so then you can enhance it. Meaning you might have to dissect and release all sorts of belief systems about money in order to actually have the ease with money, if money's the target. If it's relationship, same thing. Like, if you're really desiring a great relationship and that's on your manifestation list, well, what's your point of view about relationship now? What do your relationships look like now? Because we are constantly creating our realities. Like, it's not about like learning how to create your reality. It's learning how to do that consciously, because all of us are creating our realities all of the time. But what is showing up as our physical reality is an indication of what is within our inner world right now. And so if you're wanting the physical reality to shift, you have to be willing to go inwards or be brutally honest with yourself about what it is that you're living and why you're living that way, what it is that's creating your reality, and then choosing to change whatever needs to change so that then you can actually have the greater result, right? So what is the conflict of interest, if there is one, and is it changeable? And it might be simply acknowledging the difference that you are, right? Because if you're someone that's kind and honoring and loving and desires a greater world, having more money isn't going to turn you into an asshole. That's just going to enhance what is already there. You do not become like everybody else when you achieve the target that they've already achieved. You still get to be you. And so it's the acknowledgement of that sometimes that allows that to shift and change. Like acknowledging that you are taking yourself on this journey and you are going to be you along the way. You're not going to turn into something else. Yet if there is that huge charge and resistance and that feeling, like if I'm speaking right now and you're listening to me and you're like, yeah, that's not true. If that's not true for you, it means that there is charge there that needs to be released, okay? It means that there's something within your subconscious that you are carrying that is making you believe that something different will occur. And that could be that perhaps you had some people in your family that had that programming that meant that when they were, in a position of power, they perhaps treated you badly or they treated others badly. And so there's this charge around the effect that created in your world that will create the resistance to becoming that, okay? So if that's there, there's a bit of inner work to do. There's some separation from the experience of that person and you. And there's the acknowledgement that you are not them and you are different to them, and that you maybe have learned all sorts of things from having that kind of experience in your world about what not to do. A lot of the time we pull in people or experiences in order to learn how to be greater than what it is that experience is. So how do you get to be greater in the future with what it is that you're seeking to create? So the last thing is, am I afraid of what people in my life will do or choose or direct at me if I create this? So that may have come up when you ask that question of what's the worst thing about, if I achieve this. Sometimes the people stuff comes up. It might be, people are going to want stuff from me. I'm going to have to be responsible for people. It might be people are going to hate me. They're going to be jealous of me. They're going to be envious of me. That can be a big one. Like, a lot of people will hold themselves back because they're afraid of other people's anger and rage, which just creates you being in this energetic cage of what they have decided is right for you. It never allows you the freedom to actually live your reality here on earth, okay? So if you're afraid of what other people in your life will do or choose, or how they'll respond if you achieve your targets, the thing you want to ask yourself is, do I value this relationship enough to actually give myself up for it, sacrifice myself for it? Because that's what you're doing. If that is the thing that's stopping you from achieving what you want to achieve, you are making their reality more valuable than you. You are saying that you are not that important. Is that the reality you want to create, where you are not important? It's a tricky one. There is all sorts of programming often that, needs to be unraveled or released in order to fully break free from that. Like, in my experience, Other people may have a different experience. I am a recovering people pleaser and codependent. So, and this very much ties into that dynamic, you know, when you're afraid of what other people are going to think or how they're going to respond to you, that's where you've kind of invested a little bit too much into what their paradigm is, and there's a lack of acknowledgement of your own reality or your own value. And so sometimes it's just acknowledging that truth of what you're really doing. Like, hang on a minute. If I'm going to stop myself from achieving this because of someone's envy or rage, what is that telling? Where am I putting myself? And what is that saying about me? And getting that clarity of, this is actually completely devaluing me. It's making me not be important at all in my own life. It is self-abandonment. Sometimes that is enough to create that fire within that gives you the energy to be able to create beyond that resistance. Sometimes it's the acknowledgement that whatever that is, as I mentioned in the previous episode, that's not about you. Like, all of those feelings, all of those belief systems, how they respond, that's about their need for control. And it's about what they're not willing to release or don't know how to release within their own energetic field. And it's about the parts of themselves that they've not yet met and they're perhaps in resistance to meeting. Okay? It's about their own growth. People can control when they're in avoidance of growth or in avoidance of change, and they control through emotion. So they will direct the envy, they'll direct the anger, they'll direct all sorts of other things at you in order to try and get you to be under their control so that they feel nice and safe in their reality and don't have to look at what needs to change for them. So if you're somebody that values change, giving up yourself for other people is not going to work. So it's making that commitment, looking at your values, making that commitment to yourself, that you're going to honor those values. You're going to honor yourself. You're going to treat yourself with respect. You're going to treat yourself with importance. That's what begins to shift and change things in a way that allows you to begin to engage more with what it is that you're asking for. Now, that engagement is only going to really occur if it really is something that interests you. If you're asking for things that don't interest you, you're going to disconnect. So sometimes there might be some ways that you've got to kind of like almost trick yourself into achieving a target. So an example would be if money isn't something that you value, setting targets of money is going to be like disinteresting. Like it's not something that you value. It's not interesting. So you're not necessarily going to feel inspired to head in that direction. So if that's you, if you're asking for things that you know that perhaps aren't like the thing that you value the most, you also might want to look at, how can I connect this to my values? Okay, so what is it that would light me up with regards to this target? And it might be the way in which you create the money, right? It might be, like me, for example, empowering others. Like, that's exciting. That's something that brings me joy. So that kind of thing, looking at how you can connect things in a way to your values so that you're inspired to actually head in that direction and bring your energy with you. Because it's only when you're bringing that fullness of your being that things actually become in alignment and all of those synchronicities occur and you have a lot more ease with creation. So I hope this has created some clarity for you guys. If you are somebody that this has maybe pushed a button or two for, I do one-to-one sessions of theta healing that helps people shift and change, reprogram their subconscious. I also have coming up this month the Create Your Reality Monthly Club, which is a group call every month where we get together and just kind of like clear the path to whatever it is that we're trying to create or manifest. So using energy healing downloads, acknowledging what is, and asking questions to kind of navigate the twists and turns so that we can have a lot more ease with whatever the target is. I have that coming up in a couple of weeks. It's beginning. So if you'd like information about either of them, you can check out the links below this podcast. Also, next month I have the basic theta healing and advanced theta healing classes online, which are great tools to be able to do that inner work, have that self-reflection and reprogram your subconscious, or assist others to reprogram theirs. So if any of that interests you, you are more than welcome to check out the links connected to this podcast. And I hope this has contributed something to you. If it has, feel free to let me know in the comments. And also, if there are things that you would like me to do videos on, feel free to let me know. You can leave a comment below this video, or you can email me on my webpage and let me know that way. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great day.